Good afternoon. My name is Jen Salkin from the Benjamin Rose Institute on Aging, and thank you for joining us today for the Caregiver's Guide to Estate Planning, how to prepare for yours and your loved one's future. This program is part of our virtual programs for caregivers that we offer the first Wednesday of every month. This program will be recorded and we'll be sharing the link with you all in an email in the next couple of days. The video will also be on our website in our resource library, so please feel free to share that with friends and family who could not join us today. We have a lot of information to cover this afternoon, so we will hold all questions until after the presentation. However, you may submit a question at any time using the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Before I introduce our speaker today, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Benjamin Rose. We're a Cleveland-based nonprofit founded in 1908. Our mission is to support caregivers and empower all people to age well through research, consumer responsive services, and client advocacy. We provide a variety of services and supports to help people age well in the community. That includes behavioral health services, social work, counseling, and coaching to help people achieve financial wellness and housing stability. We also operate the Rose Centers for Aging Well, which are our senior centers located throughout the Cleveland area, and we are a Meals on Wheels provider. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Rachel Slomovitz. Rachel is a financial empowerment coach at ESOP. Please join me in welcoming Rachel.
Thank you, Jen, and thank you for having me today. So my name is Rachel Slomovitz. I'm a financial empowerment coach here at ESOP. Next. So ESOP is a subsidiary of the Benjamin Rose Institute on Aging. ESOP stands for Empowering and Strengthening Ohio's People. We are a nonprofit HUD-approved housing and financial counseling agency. We help adults in all stages of life achieve and maintain financial wellness and housing stability. And we envision a community in which everyone has economic opportunity and financial stability. Next. Up on the screen is a list of our financial programs and our housing programs. We do things like financial coaching, one-on-one with clients. We do financial education workshops. We have a match savings program, a benefits enrollment center. We do senior small dollar emergency loans. We are certified vision screeners, and we also do free income tax preparation. On the housing side, we offer homebuyer education classes, pre and post purchase counseling, rental counseling, foreclosure prevention, property tax counseling, and then we also have a nonprofit realty company called Branches. Next. Today, we're going to learn the basics of estate planning, how to prepare advanced healthcare directives, and how to prepare for the unexpected life events that come our way. Next. Now on the screen for estate planning and preparing for the future is a word cloud with a whole lot of legal terms. Words that might seem complicated, overwhelming, you might not understand what they all mean, but hopefully today I'm able to break it down and simplify the process of estate planning for everybody. This will make it a lot easier for you to discuss it with your family or even to go talk with an attorney and really know what you're talking about and what they're talking about. Up on the screen are some legal resources for you, and this presentation will be sent out to everybody, so you have all this really important information. But I do want to preface by saying I am not an attorney. I don't pretend to be one either. So these resources are great to go to if you have any specific legal questions that I can't answer today or probably shouldn't answer. The first one is the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. And you can go online to this website, type in your zip code, and it will pull up all the accredited and licensed elder law attorneys in your area. A great one to have is the Pro Seniors Legal Hotline. I give this out to all my clients. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from this. It provides free legal services for any Ohio resident over the age of 60, regardless of income. So I believe it's about 30 minutes of free legal advice. AARP has a great resource of estate planning documents. You can type in, your state, and you can pull up things like a power of attorney or a living will, as well as some other resources. And also here in Cleveland, we have the Legal Aid Society that has many great resources available. Next. Okay, I thought this cartoon was appropriate today since summer is almost over and fall is coming up any day now, unfortunately, but it says with Thanksgiving around the corner, I thought this would be a good time to review my estate plan. Next. And this leads into estate planning should be started as soon as possible. You know, I just can't stress this enough that you never know what can happen, whether it's an emergency, an accident, or a death in your family. So you always want to start this ASAP. Next. Now, I mentioned in the resources about how to find an elder law attorney, and you may not know what an elder law attorney does. Well, an elder law attorney helps with Medicaid and benefit planning, estate planning, including your wills, power of attorney, all of the estate planning documents. They also assist with probate and administration issues, guardianship and conservatorship matters, but they also help with people who might be a victim of elder abuse, whether that's financial exploitation or physical abuse. Next. So we're here to talk about estate planning, and when I say the word estate, what typically comes into people's minds is something grand like a mansion or large amounts of money. However, an estate is really anything that you own. So that includes your property, the house you live in, your bank accounts, savings accounts, if you have any other sort of retirement or financial products, business assets if you're a business owner, life insurance policies, but it also includes your personal property. So for example, if you have a piece of jewelry, you have a necklace that really means something to you, it might not have a lot of monetary value, but it's something you want to pass down to your granddaughter, you would have to have this in your estate plan. You would have to put this in your will to direct it to be handed down to your granddaughter. So basically, we all have an estate, no matter our financial status. Next. So most of you that are listening today, I know you're all caregivers, and as a caregiver, you do so much for your loved ones, and that's making sure that everybody is taken care of, whether that's emotional and social support, household support, medical care, care coordination, physical care, and financial caregiving as well. Next. So as a caregiver, or just in general, talking about something like estate planning, you have to be brave enough to start a conversation that matters. It's such a difficult conversation for people to have, and people tend to put it off until it's too late. You know, it's intimidating to bring up things like aging, death, and finances. Those are really difficult topics to discuss, but it has to be talked about. And one way to start the conversation is to start the conversation early. You always want to do it sooner than later. Like I mentioned, you never know when an emergency or an accident can happen. It's a good thing to try and break the ice to start the conversation. To try and get people to open up, you can start with a story or an anecdote just to make them feel at ease. And another good idea is to get help from a mediator. Estate planning can be emotional. It can get a little heated sometimes between families. Bringing in a mediator or a third party like an estate attorney, which would be an elder law attorney, or a trusted relative, somebody that can be objective. Next. So when you're starting that conversation and you're having it, you want to ask a few questions, and some good key questions to ask your aging parents or your spouse, whoever you may be a caregiver for. Who do you want to handle all your financial and healthcare decisions? Do you have a will? What healthcare coverage do you have? What financial accounts do you have and where? Where do you keep all your financial paperwork? And where is your safe deposit box and key? This is important because if you don't have that key to the safe deposit box, you'll have to go through probate. What are your monthly expenses and income? How do you pay your bills? And are you willing to sell or move out of your home? And this is a difficult question to ask people and to talk about as well, because everybody has emotional ties to their homes. But as we get older, you know, sometimes it comes down to finances or maintenance on the house becomes too much, or walking upstairs may be difficult. So this is another question to talk about. Next. Why do you want to plan for the future? Why do we need to get this estate planning together? It gives you control of your property while you're alive and well. It plans for you and your loved ones if you're unable to make your wishes known. And it gives what you have to who you want, the way you want, when you want. So really it's all about control. Next. Now, some of the documents that we're going to talk about today will prevent you from going through probate court. And as we all know, probate court is not something that anybody wants to go through. It's the legal process that deals with all the assets and debts left behind after somebody dies. And if you don't have a valid will, your assets are distributed according to state law to the next of kin. So your things may not go to who you want them to go to. Next. What's so bad about probate? Well, it can be very expensive. There are so many fees and costs attached to it, and it can take a long time. You know, they say between 9 months to 2 years, but I have seen it go beyond that. For years, people are stuck in probate and their assets are usually frozen. Probate is a public process. You will have no privacy. Your family will have no privacy during that time, and your family will have no control over it. Next. So some of the documents we'll talk about today, we'll talk about a living will, the durable power of attorney for healthcare, do not resuscitate form, your will, durable power of attorney for finances, and a living trust. And most of these documents are fairly easy to get. I mentioned that you can go on to aarp.com and you can pull from your state most of these documents. Other ones you can find online elsewhere. Libraries are able to pull them for you, or you can go and talk with an attorney. Next. So according to a recent survey, 64% of Americans have not made a will. And I can tell you from my experience that this is so true. I've been in a room of like 100 people presenting a workshop on estate planning, and I always say to them, how many of you have created a will or started your estate planning? And very few hands go up. So that is surprising. Next. The first document we'll talk about is really the most basic one for the estate planning documents, the last will and testament. And a will indicates how a person's assets and property will be distributed upon death. It must be notarized, signed by 2 witnesses, and you do have to be of sound mind to understand what is going on. And it usually lists a detailed set of instructions that it can account for arrangements for care of minors. You know, a lot of grandparents are taking care of grandkids right now, and you really want to make sure that they're accounted for and taken care of, as well as pets. Gifts, that would be whatever you want to leave to somebody, to a beneficiary. Trust to manage the estate, and also funeral and or burial arrangements. Next. Your beneficiaries can include your friends, family members. I put in here charities. I had a client I had worked with about a year ago who had been saving money her whole life. She worked really hard, but she didn't have any children. She had never been married. She was getting older, and she wasn't close with any of her family. So one day she said to me, you know, who am I saving this money for? Why am I saving this money for? I don't really have anybody to pass it down to. So I said, you know, do you have a bucket list? Do you have an extravagant vacation you want to go on? She couldn't really think of anything. So we decided that maybe a charity might be a good idea of who to leave her money to. And that's what she did. She looked into something that really meant something to her and did that. So any other organization that you deem worthy of receiving your assets. Next. Okay, a revocable living trust. A living trust provides instructions about the person's estate and appoints somebody called a trustee to hold title to property and funds for your beneficiaries. Now, a living trust is a little more complicated. This is something that is definitely advisable to speak with an attorney on, and it will most likely cost you because you will have to be working with an attorney. But as long as you're mentally competent, you can change or dissolve the trust at any time at your own discretion for any reason, thus meaning revocable. And then the trustee follows these instructions after the person can no longer manage his or her affairs. Next. Now, a living trust, I mentioned, is a little more complicated. This is if you have bigger assets. You might have multiple properties, whether they're income properties, even timeshares, vacation homes. It does cost more, but it saves you time and money later. It's a detailed plan for your property disposition. It does give a quicker distribution of assets to your beneficiaries, and this is because it doesn't have to go through probate. A lot of times a will actually does have to go through probate if you want to pass something down, and in order to make sure that that happens, oftentimes it goes through probate. So it does provide privacy by doing a living trust. It makes it more difficult to challenge that way, and it can reduce or eliminate estate taxes, and again avoids probate. Next. Okay, this cartoon is cute. It says, "A raise in my allowance is fine, Dad, but what I'm really after is power of attorney." And this is funny because if you are power of attorney for somebody, you really do wield a lot of power. However, it can come with some risks. Next. And when we're talking about power of attorney, you're assigning somebody to take over your finances and manage those and pay bills for you if you're incapacitated in whatever way. So some warning signs of diminished financial capacity to watch out for with your loved one would be forgetting to pay bills, paying the same bill several times, misplacing financial documents, declines in checkbook management, falling for scams, problems with math skills, making change. My mother was a caregiver for quite some time with my grandfather. He had Parkinson's, and then he started getting dementia. Well, during that time, before that, he was a businessman. He was an entrepreneur. He was great at math. He was great at keeping the books. But we noticed that his math skills started declining, and that was the first thing we noticed for his diminished financial capacity. Impaired judgment about financial investments, and loss of general knowledge regarding financial terms. So a lot of warning signs to watch out for. So we mentioned the durable power of attorney for finances. This is another form easily accessible online. But this allows you to give somebody the authority to handle financial transactions on your behalf. And it does stay in effect even after you become incapacitated. So for example, if somebody gets Alzheimer's, the word durable means that this will continue even after they are no longer to handle matters on their own. And you can give a trusted person as much authority over your finances as you like. Next. So like the cartoon, I mentioned, a power of attorney wields a lot of power, but with that come risks. So you have to be careful. They might pressure you to grant more authority than you wish. They might misuse your funds, forge checks, outright steal from you. They can even change the names on a will, bank account. They can change your beneficiaries on a life insurance policy. So a lot they can do. Next. So some ways to protect yourself if you are naming somebody as a power of attorney for your finances. You do want to trust but verify that person. You don't want to appoint anybody with a substance abuse, a gambling problem. For example, you don't want to assign your nephew who's out at the casinos every day, gambling away his own money, to be in charge of yours. You want somebody that's financially responsible. You do want to tell others, at least trusted people within your family, about your power of attorney, because a lot of people will take advantage of that. And, trusted family members need to be aware who that person is. Beware of any new best friends who offer to manage your money, and avoid appointing hired caregivers or helpers. You want to keep that separate. And at any time, you can change or cancel this if you think that you're being taken advantage of. Next. And when we talk about our estate plan and all these documents, you want to update them. So I was actually talking with my mom the other day about this, and she said, I have not looked at my will in over 20 years. And I said, Mom, 20 years, you've had grandkids, and there's been divorce and death. So this is something you need to do, is go back anytime there's the birth of a child, a divorce, a marriage. Otherwise, every 3 to 5 years, you need to go back and review. Next. Okay, an advanced healthcare directive are the next estate planning documents we'll be talking about, and these are so important. It's a legal document that specifies your wishes for end-of-life healthcare and who should make your healthcare decisions on your behalf. It also helps others know what type of medical care you want. It lets your family know, it lets the doctors know, it lets the hospital know. And each state actually has their own advanced healthcare directives. It's not only about old age, but for any medical crisis. Next. And I put up here, the least effective medicine is the one the patient does not take, and that is so true. Next. So why is advanced healthcare planning so important? Not only does it make sure that all your values, priorities, and preferences will be known, it avoids unwanted medical interventions, prevents family conflict. And, I forgot to mention with the financial documents, when somebody dies, a lot of times there's conflict. And I hear all the time people say, well, my family gets along, my brothers and sisters and I, we all get along. But once there's an emergency, once there's a death, things change and there's always family conflict. It also lifts the burden of uncertainty from loved ones, takes the pressure off of them to make these really tough decisions, and helps the medical team know who you're going to trust. Next. The living will is the first document we'll talk about for advanced healthcare directives. And this is a document that gives you say in your healthcare if you become unable to do so, if you're incapacitated, if you are unconscious, or you have Alzheimer's. Applies when you're terminally ill. Now, this is limited to deathbed concerns only, things like if you're on a ventilator, you need CPR, desired quality of life, hospice, blood transfusions. And these are really important documents to have, especially during COVID-19. Think about it. A lot of people were on ventilators or still are on ventilators. They're not letting loved ones into the hospitals to be with the patient. So having these documents in place and in your medical file is really important. It's something between you and your doctor. You'll have your doctor sign this, and he or she will stick it in your medical record. Next. It's very important to give copies to your family and friends. Again, important during COVID-19. And it goes into effect right after the doctor states you're no longer able to make your own healthcare decisions. Next. So just to illustrate how important a living will is, most of you may remember Terri Schiavo. Back in 1998, she had a heart attack and was in a vegetative state. It was all over the news. I'll just read this real quickly. Terri's husband, Michael, was convinced Terri wouldn't want to continue life in a persistent vegetative state with little hope of recovery. Terri's parents, Robert and Mary Schindler, were positive Terri wouldn't want to be taken off feeding tubes due to her Roman Catholic affiliation. Both parties were absolutely confident they knew Terri's wishes, but lacking any living will, this bitter dispute carried on over 10 years. Even after the U.S. Supreme Court denied the Schindlers' appeal, they were still petitioning to have Terri's feeding tube reinserted. Their last petition was denied the day before Terri Schiavo died in 2005. So again, just illustrates how important it is to have a living will. Next. The Do Not Resuscitate is another document really important to have. It instructs healthcare professionals not to perform CPR or things like chest compressions, using a defibrillator, breathing tubes, and ventilators. This is something that will be signed by your doctor and put into your medical record. Really important to have. For example, if you have a heart attack and you call 911 and you're at home and the ambulance shows up, unless you have a copy of this Do Not Resuscitate, they will do everything in their power to keep you alive. Next. Some questions to ask yourself and your loved ones. For example, if a stroke leaves you unable to move and your heart stops, would you want CPR? What if you are in pain at the end of life? Do you want medication to treat the pain? And what if you are permanently unconscious and then develop pneumonia? Do you want antibiotics? And do you want to be placed on a ventilator? Some really important things to think about. Next. So like a power of attorney for finances, the power of attorney for healthcare also names a person that we call also a proxy or an agent to make medical decisions for you if you can't do them yourself. Now this covers all healthcare decisions. It covers everything that a living will may not. So let's say you are temporarily unconscious due to an accident or surgery, this would go into effect. Next. They can provide medical decisions that are not covered in your living will, hire and fire doctors, have access to medical records, and really important, they can have visitation rights as well. Next. And when thinking about who your power of attorney for healthcare should be, some of the qualifications would be somebody willing to speak on your behalf and somebody who shares your views and values on life or is willing to separate theirs from yours. They should live close by in case of an emergency, somebody you trust with your life, and also somebody who's a strong advocate and can also handle conflicting opinions between family members and doctors. Next. So with your advanced healthcare directives, you want to keep those in a place that can be easily accessed and easily found by your family members. Give one to your actual proxy, your agent, and give your doctor a copy to put into your medical record as well. Next. And just like all the other documents, you want to go back and re-examine all of these healthcare ones. Anytime there's a new diagnosis, a decline in your health, a new decade, or death, you want to revisit these. Next. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to prepare for unexpected life events that can happen. A lot of emergencies come up, a lot of disasters, and things that can really set us back financially. Next. So some examples of these life events would be disability, a long-term illness, the death of a spouse, losing that income, the special needs of children or aging parents. I see a lot of people get set back financially when it comes to car repair and they go into debt, either getting payday loans to get their car fixed or using all their credit cards, maxing them out. Job loss, home repair, change in benefits, natural or man-made disasters, and of course, the pandemic. Next. So a few tips on what you should do to prevent yourself from getting behind financially would be to build your emergency fund. And the experts say 3 to 5 months worth of cash on hand, but that's a lot of money for some of us. So I feel that just throwing change in a jar, you know, and at the end of the year, putting that all together, rolling it up, taking it to the bank, you'll end up with a good amount of money. You have to start somewhere. And this emergency fund is for these types of setbacks. It can even be for if you have to replace a furnace in your home, you're not then using a credit card to do that. You can dip into your emergency fund. Make sure trusted family members know where to find these documents, and that's really important. I'm going to try and send out as well something called a disaster checklist to everybody where you can keep a list of, you know, all your phone numbers for, you know, who you pay your bills to, your account numbers, just so that you have that in case of an emergency. Make sure you're properly insured, make sure all your beneficiaries are up to date, and consider automatic payment of reoccurring bills. And that's good in case you are in the hospital for an extended stay. You'll just have that peace of mind that everything will be taken care of at home. Next. You should definitely have all your financial and legal documentation on hand, things like housing payments, your sources of income, insurance policies, telephone numbers of all your financial service providers, all your up-to-date estate planning documents, and any tax statements as well in case of a in case you need disaster assistance. Next. You should also have your medical information on hand, like your doctor and hospital information, copies of health insurance cards, your immunization records, and a list of all your medications. Next. Here in Cleveland, we have the Cleveland Department of Aging, and you can get for free at no cost. It's called a File of Life. It's a preparedness magnet file that goes up on your fridge, and you can fill in all your important information about medical history, emergency contacts, your medications, and have that all in one place. Really good thing to have, and I've got the phone number here to call and order it. Next. You should also create a household checklist. And this is something where, you need to put all your important documents in one place and make sure that they're easily accessible, whether that's in, some people get the small fireproof safes that you can get from Home Depot or Lowe's. Some people put things in a safe deposit box. Some people put them in a locked cabinet. Let your family members know where to find these papers. I've had clients come to me and say, I don't know who to pay my mortgage to. I've never had to do it, and my husband didn't involve me in that, and I'm not sure where he kept the papers. So really important. Give permission in advance for your doctor or lawyer to talk with your caregiver, and then create an emergency contact list like family, friends, neighbors, and any community resources you can think of. You can always call 211 here in Cleveland is a great resource. The United Way, they can give you resources, as well as ESOP and Benjamin Rose. Next. Okay, and so this last slide really just is to show you how hard it is to take care of somebody else if you're burnt out, if you're stressed, or you become ill yourself. So I just thought this was a great thing to put on here. Make time for yourself, really important to do. So I wanted to see if anybody has any questions about anything we talked about. Hopefully I simplified it for you and you can go and have those difficult conversations with your loved ones. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Rachel, for that really informative presentation. We have Sarah, who has been monitoring our question box. Sarah, if you want to go ahead, if we have any questions.
Our first question is, what is the difference between a guardianship and a conservatorship?
Ooh, that's a good question. Now the guardianship I believe it usually happens, and like I said, I'm not an attorney, but a guardianship usually happens while you're alive, but you might not be, have the mental capacity, or you might be incompetent, so that's why people get guardianships. A conservatorship is more over the estate, so personal belongings, money, assets, all of that. Any
Thank
other
you.
questions?
So the next question is, can we get a copy of the presentation? Yes, a recording and the slides will be made available to you after we are done today. The next question is there anyone we can talk with after this? I'm assuming in regards to estate planning.
You can talk to me. Yeah, my information is going to be on the presentation. I give you my number right now as well. My direct line is 216-373-1769. And again, that Pro Seniors hotline is like priceless to get, free legal advice. And like I said, I've had really good feedback from clients who have used them for some estate planning, and they've given them a lot of good advice and help.
And our next question, does ESOP only help in Cleveland, and how much does it cost to get help?
Okay, so we are nonprofits, so we don't charge anything. All our services are free. Typically, a lot of our programs are really only for Northeast Ohio. Things like foreclosure prevention, we do every once in a while out of state can help people. But yes, typically it is for at least within the state.
The next question, what is the appropriate role of a power of attorney?
What is the appropriate role? Well, the power of attorney, there's a lot of different things that they can do, and when you're filling it out, you really do have to be specific what they are allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do. So some of them are very basic, where they will only pay your bills if you're incapacitated for whatever reason. I've actually had clients who, go away to another state for the summer to visit their grandkids, and they have a power of attorney at home taking care of their finances just to, so they don't have to do that. But it can get as complicated as, dealing with bank accounts and different financial products and life insurance policies and things like that. So there's a broad spectrum of what a power of attorney for finances can do. And it's really up to you how much authority you want to give them.
The next question, what if my loved one doesn't go through with the estate planning and becomes like incapacitated? Can I become their power of attorney without their okay?
That's a good question, and I'm not quite sure about the legalities of that one. I'd have to look into it. Typically the power of attorney occurs before that happens, and I think that's why we always say, get all this done sooner than later. But I can maybe follow up with that answer, because I don't know right now.
And the next question is there a cost associated with filing all the individual different forms?
Okay, so there is no cost if you do it yourself. I always say it's advisable to use an attorney. I actually just was talking with one of my clients the other day who went and did all of her estate planning herself. Now, granted, she did not have a revocable trust. She only had a will and her advanced healthcare directives. So she was able to do that all on her own. And that's that's free if you don't use an attorney. Anytime you use an attorney, of course, it's going to cost you.
The next question is, are you seeing people in person?
We are not seeing people in person yet. All our clients we're doing our intakes and our appointments over the phone. And I can give them the number too to schedule an appointment. So our intake line, if you wanted to schedule an appointment with me or with another counselor, our number for that is 216-373-1730.
And the next question is, how complicated are the forms to fill out? Do you really need professional help to fill everything out?
That depends on your situation. So I've helped people fill out power of attorneys. I've never helped with a will. I actually am, my husband's about to turn 50 at the end of the month, and I've been on him about getting a will and getting our estate plan together, and he's been putting it off and putting me off on this. And now with his birthday, right, coming up in a few months, he finally said okay, and we made an appointment. We're going to actually go next month to speak with an attorney. Even myself knowing about this, I feel more comfortable having that professional help me with this and making sure that everything's accurate. But like I said, I just had a client recently do it all on her own, and she was able to do it fairly easily. It's the trust, those are the ones that are more complicated, and depending on how much stuff you have, how much assets, and how, different things like that. That's what makes it more complicated, but the forms themselves are fairly easy to do. And again, you just need to get them notarized and signed by 2 witnesses.
Do we have any more questions, Sarah? Okay, well, with that, I want to thank you all for joining today's program. We hope you will join us for future virtual programs for caregivers. We do have one on September 1st that will be about transitioning your loved one to long-term care. We hope that you will complete a survey that we are now offering, and this will be emailed as well. So this is just a quick 7-question survey to gauge what you thought of today's presentation so we can continue to improve them. The link is in the chat, and once again, it will also be emailed. More details for registration for our next virtual program for caregiver will be available at www.benrose.org. And we hope you have a great rest of the day. And once again, thanks for attending.
Thank you.